I'm going to share with you my experience attending a panel discussion of former South Asian American clerks to the Supreme Court of the United States of America. Hello everyone, my name is Fatima Mahmood. Welcome and welcome back to my channel. This video reflects my own views and opinions, no one else's, and it's not been pre-approved or endorsed by any federal agency or other employer, academic program, or membership association. I believe that not only is it important for paralegals to understand their own paralegal careers and the careers of other paralegals, it's important that they understand the legal profession as a whole. Within the context of the court system, it becomes important to understand the educational background, the on-the-job training, and the work experience of job groups such as judges, law clerks, and other court staff in order to have a broader and holistic picture of the whole legal profession. Doing that can only strengthen a paralegal's role in the whole legal profession. The South Asian Bar Association of DC, known as SABA DC, hosted a panel of former South Asian Supreme Court clerks about their experiences clerking there. They share their first-hand experiences, insights, and other interesting stories. This happened in 2019 before COVID. The panelists were Kirti Dalta, former clerk to the Honorable Justice Sonia Sotomayor, Arpreet Garg, former clerk for the Honorable Justice David Sutter and the Honorable Justice Stephen Breyer, Devi Rao, former clerk for the Honorable Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Thierry Vignaraj, former clerk to Honorable Justice Stephen Breyer. I want there to be no misunderstanding or miscommunication that I'm not using direct quotes in this presentation. The information I'm sharing comes from my own notes, impressions, and recollections from attending this past event. If you've studied the American court system, you know that the Supreme Court controls its own dockets. It decides which cases from the appellate court process are granted cert and then therefore heard before the Supreme Court. So in that beginning stages, the clerks have lots of roles. The clerks are involved in reviewing petitions, and sometimes clerks can be pooled across justices. The clerks also help the justices prepare for the upcoming oral arguments that the parties will present. Sometimes there are a few short pages of a bench memo that they help prepare. Question that the clerks have to think about, because the justices are thinking about it and helping the justice prepare for it, is what does this case really turn on? Sometimes there are lots of drafts to final opinions, and the clerks can be involved in that as well. The focus of the court often can be work on federal law that should be the same across the United States. Sometimes they can help resolve disagreements between federal appellate courts in the same system. A question that the court is focusing on: is this case a good vehicle case to move an issue forward? Sometimes a case has presented in front of the court for consideration. By the time the court gets to it, the issue will vanish for the parties. The clerks were clear that a case granted at the beginning of the term can be very different than the case that is granted at the end of the Supreme Court's term. Another important feature for the clerk is to definitely make sure that if there are memos that recommend denying cert, that the justices take a look at that. The clerks are also involved in addressing the question is, are there problems with the court taking this specific case and granting cert? What the clerks provide the justices, and not just at the Supreme Court level, but at other levels, is fresh pair of eyes and fresh perspectives. Something that often is not emphasized enough to clerks before they start a clerkship, especially at the Supreme Court level, is the issue of death penalties. Someone in the DC office, a clerk, monitors the execution at some place in the country that is about to happen, because often with execution there are attempts to make last-minute appeal. And so a clerk has to wait until another person calls them, someone official calls them and says, the execution has happened and you can go home, or the appeal is being granted. It feels like an awesome weight that is put on the clerks that often isn't clear before clerkship starts. The clerks also learned firsthand through their experience of what a well-written SCOTUS brief contains. It must be well written, it must be researched, proper cases cited back to arguments. The goal is to get the reader in the headspace of the writer to agree with the writer's point of view. Again, also during this process, the clerks are helping the justice prepare questions for oral argument, and a lot of those can come up based on reading the filed briefs. There is a lot of potential for collaboration with other clerks, and there's a lot of talking through issues with other law clerks within the justice's own chambers and in the other justices' chambers. And that aspect can feel a little bit different than other clerkships at other levels of the judiciary. Sometimes people can write really strong briefs, but it's also very important to have excellent oral argument skills when appearing before the Supreme Court. Sometimes a clerk will also look at threshold issue, which is, does the Supreme Court have jurisdiction to hear this case at all? And sometimes some clerks will play a devil advocate role or be assigned a devil advocate role to write something or prepare something to argue against the fact that the Supreme Court has jurisdiction in a particular case. We discussed amicus briefs, which is friends of the court briefs, which parties that are not party to the case wanting to appear before the Supreme Court submit a legal brief memorandum of information they want the court to know. The way to have a helpful amicus brief is to find new research that is helpful to the legal arguments being made. Something example is that, like a piece of history that no one has looked at before within the context of this case. Something that a lot of people may not have realized is the openness of the justices to have an opinion and then be open to reconsidering that opinion once they're in conference with the other justices and discussing the briefs and the oral arguments that they were just presented with. There are, of course, trade-offs with such a prestigious position as a SCOTUS clerkship. The hours are long. They're working almost every day. Sometimes maybe just have one weekend day off. And you are learning from the minds of brilliant justices in the United States. And the challenging thing, for example, is being involved with executions and stays of execution. One of the feelings that can come from this type of clerkship is immense sense of pride and privilege. I was in the room when this decision was made. I was in this room when this very strong oral argument was made. At the same time, I was there when that death penalty execution was not stayed. And I was there when that went through. An interesting feature of this type of clerkship is the importance of camaraderie with the other clerks to ensure that everyone's eyes are on the most important things for that case and for that court at that time. Some of the important things that clerks can learn from justices is the importance of focusing on you need to persuade the opposition to your arguments. You're not there to persuade people on your own side. And the importance of really earning and winning that argument. Other tips are figure out ways to make it easy for someone, any type of judge, to rule in favor of your arguments and your clients. Lessen the work of the judges, and by association, lessen the work of the clerks. A lot of people already know this, but once you have a Supreme Court clerkship, it opens many professional doors for you. Something that is a consideration is how this type of ruling will affect the law in America and how things will actually shake out in the real world as a result of the ruling. The Supreme Court and other judicial offices have had clerks for many decades. If you ever get a chance to hear them speak about their experiences and what they learned, definitely go for it. Thank you for watching my video. I'd love to hear from you on email at fmahmood@wellesley.edu. You can also find me on LinkedIn at that address. And if you do send me a connection request, please go ahead and send me a note. Before you go, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to my channel. I'd really appreciate it. And please go ahead and watch my next video. Thank you.